Funding for the RISE project was provided by the National Science Foundation, the Brady Education Foundation, and generous support from Ellen R. Cohen to Tufts University. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, almost the whole rainbow? Yes. So we'll take these flowers apart if you want to. That's what I want to do right now. I'm going to take it apart so I can look at every different piece. I have some leaves here.
When I began the program, I always said, I don't have a handle on science and technology and engineering. I mostly stick with literacy and language and creative arts in the classroom. I kind of leave that to the side.
Do you think if we put them in water that they'll come back to life?
But I knew, since that was not my strong point, that I wanted to get involved with RISE so that I could try to develop professionally. And from the beginning, I realized that really science, technology, and engineering sort of is intertwined with everything else that I've been doing in the classroom.
Drank the water, it sucked it up, and then it turned it to what color? Blue. It turned it to blue.
And I've just grown from year 1 to year 3 now. It's just prevalent everywhere. So it's almost as if I do a creative arts activity, it can almost probably be considered a science activity.
It's a pinwheel!
My journey from the beginning to now is just realizing that I may not have been comfortable with science, technology, and engineering in the beginning, but I did do it, and maybe the label wasn't there. But now I have realized that it was, and I've deepened it as we've gone along and actually developed more of it into my classroom so that it's everywhere. It's in every area, everything I do. I think now in the back of my mind, I always say, wow, okay, that has a science component to it, and I wouldn't have thought of that before, so it was enlightening.
I've done work with Head Start for many, many years now, and so when I moved to Tufts from New York City, one of the first things I wanted to do was to connect with the Head Start programs here. When I first came here and was introduced to the then head of Head Start, we started talking about some ideas that I had been working on with colleagues at NYU, and different aspects of that project kind of took hold. Daryl Greenfield at the University of Miami, he and I know each other from when I was a graduate student at UPenn. And we had been simultaneously, while I was having the conversations here, having conversations around preschool science.
I came to Boston, and at the time I was extremely excited about how science seemed to me to be an ideal way to really excite young children and to provide a way of getting their school readiness in multiple areas. She invited me to begin to help form a team and to put in a proposal to try to get funding to do this project.
I am one of the science experts on the project, and I've been studying children's early science learning for quite a few years now, and was fortunate about 5-6 years ago for Daryl Greenfield and Christy McWayne to call me and ask whether I was interested in being involved in this project.
So Daryl introduced me to Christy McWayne, who has really has done a lot of work in the area of homeschool connections. And so through Christy, I met Jayanthi, and she is an expert on ethnographic research.
I remember being really drawn to the homeschool connection aspect, because that's maybe 15, 20 years ago when I was at a previous job, that is what I was very involved in. And so for me, it was an opportunity of, oh, here's someone I can partner with in thinking through how do you have this an authentic homeschool connection.
RISE is a curriculum development and research project that brings together science, technology, and engineering and a homeschool connection, because we're very interested in grounding children's science learning in the context that they live in, which is their home, their family life, their community, and the school.
RISE is a collaborative project among researchers, among teachers and other educators, among families, and among children.
It is really the authenticity with which we approached collaboration. The notion that knowledge is being created, curriculum is being created, understandings are being created together.
Unfortunately, what typically happens in most of the classrooms, most of the early childhood and preschool classrooms, is that the teachers try to cover multiple areas of school readiness, and there's a fair number of these one at a time, and that doesn't work really well. If they begin to see and do science, they can come to understand, as our RISE teachers have, that science involves all these other readiness areas. You do math, you end up working in groups with other children, you learn language, and you learn language not in an isolated way, but language that helps you understand what you're trying to learn, so children are trying to make sense out of their world.
A core piece of RISE as well is this notion that everybody's an individual, and so we all come with different sets of experiences and different understandings and different motivations and passions, and that there's a richness when you can think of each other as individuals developing, that if you just treat everybody the same way is not going to be captured or capitalized on.
We wanted something that had flexibility and freedom, but also provided teachers with a little bit of guidance. So we thought that starting out the year talking about senses and making observations would be a good idea, because observing and describing is a critical science practice.
Right away, you put your hand in, you feel something, you guess what it is, and then we take it out. Yes. Feel like, is it soft? Is it hard? Is it pinchy?
Hard.
Hard? What do you think it is? Is it long?
What
do you think it is?
A pine cone.
From there, we started talking about things that are living and things that are non-living. Children get this idea that living things move, but then there are non-living things that also move. Cars move, bicycles move, but they're not alive, and kids seem to understand that cars, even though they move, they're not alive. So they could have wonderful discussions about what is the difference between something that's living and something that's not living. In the next generation science standards, they have these three aspects. They have science and engineering practices, cross-cutting concepts, and disciplinary core ideas. Cross-cutting concepts are these concepts that you see throughout all domains of science. For example, patterns. We see patterns everywhere. There are patterns in traffic lights, and traffic lights are actually really important to these children because they live in a city where they walk around, and pedestrian safety is very important, and the teachers have to teach the children about pedestrian safety. Well, traffic lights always have the same pattern. It's green, and then the light is yellow, and then the light is red. Another cross-cutting concept is structure and function. And that has to do with the idea that the structure of an object has an effect on how it can function out there in the world. So, for example, a wooden block, if you put it standing up on its tall end, it's not very stable and it falls over. It doesn't function very well as a foundation for a block structure. But if you put it down on its flat side, then you can build on top of it so it functions as a wonderful base. Another concept is stability and change. The idea that some things are very stable and unchanging, and other things change constantly, and they change at different rates and they change in different ways. Another cross-cutting concept is cause and effect. When children are engaged with phenomena of physical science, the effect follows the cause pretty much immediately. If children let go of a marble at the top of a ramp, it rolls down the ramp. They can see that it happens right then. And if they lower the ramp, they make it not as steep of an incline, the marble moves more slowly. So then they can construct this causal relationship between the height of the ramp and the speed that the marble rolls. It's pretty direct, it's very observable, so children can connect causes and effects. Using these cross-cutting concepts became a way that teachers could connect the curriculum.
You don't have to be the scientist to teach kids science. For me, it's just wherever you can provide the material to them, they can learn it. You just explore with them. I'm not just like setting up the curriculum for children. I'm learning from the children as well. Like what I mentioned, children, they are not in the box. When we restrict the question, we just have one answer, but not them. They always like surprise me when I'm doing something in my classroom. We're not just teaching the children like how to solve that one problem. We try to teach them some concepts, how to help themselves solve their own problem.
Because we live in such a great city, it's so much, the airport, the bridges. We go on community walks and they see these things and we always talk about them. I really feel that children come back and they're able to create what they see or what they live. So a lot of the children take trains. So they build tunnels and they build the train going through the tunnel because that's their transportation, the MBTA. The children really enjoy building. And I think it was for us a one step. We had to talk about stability, foundation, and stable, and strong, and weak.
Oh my!
Very stable.
Not stable.
When you're a teacher for so many years, sometimes you get in a rut and you do the same thing year after year, even though it's different children. This year has taught me to step out of that and look at things differently. I wanted them to actually visualize seeing the metamorphosis of the caterpillar and then doing a habitat, which again are words that these children don't know, but they do now.
We'd have some almost mantra-like sayings that become focusing points for us. And so on the homeschool collaboration front, home to school is one of those. One of the others is parents as equal partners. And that was something that came up toward the end here in year 3 when we were thinking about, how do we communicate what we feel like we were probably doing very intentionally within our relationship building with parents. How do we articulate that and have it become part of what the teachers are talking about? And so parents as equal partners became another one of those sayings that now the teachers say and can point to concrete instances of how that played out in their discussion groups.
That's what this is about. You bring people together and really just form a community as they learn together, grow together. And then the parent-teacher connection, the parent-teacher activity is another aspect. We share particular activities and parent will talk about what is possible from the culture, their culture, and teacher will talk about this activity from the education point of view.
A lot of times in curriculum development projects, you might have a homeschool piece, and what that typically are extension activities, is the term that we often use in the field, extension activities that build on what's happening in the classroom and then are sent home. And the expectation is that parents will engage in those activities with their children. And that's, if that piece exists in curriculum, that's often how it exists. That's not the stance that we're taking. That's not exactly what we're doing in RISE. We're really asking teachers to engage in authentic dialogue with parents with really the explicit expectation that they're going to be learning from parents about the ways that they interact with their children, the things that are of concern to them, and what kinds of opportunities exist in the community around STE. So that they can then bring that information into their curriculum.
Cuando mi hijo entró al kindergarten este año, mucha gente me dijo que dónde había sido preparado, porque vieron que tenía muchas bases muy buenas a nivel de matemáticas, que me sorprende también. Tenía muchas bases, estaba demasiado preparado para kindergarten, que si se pudiera lo hubieran puesto en primer grado, en primer grado, porque tenía una excelente preparación. Entonces, la experiencia con mi hijo en el Head Start ha sido fantástica.
The parents who were in the Rise classroom, they reported that all of a sudden my child just come home and they just can't stop talking about the water and the air and the trees, and all of a sudden they just keep talking.
The first year my son went to Head Start, which was last year, his teacher was not involved in Rise, and I have noticed this huge change in him. The way his teacher is teaching now, letting them ask questions, exploring more, my son has done a complete 180. All he wants to do is learn.
Within Asian culture, we typically think academic is usually very high, high in the priorities in terms of really memorizing things. So one of the things that they sort of encourage a lot is, like building blocks, playing Legos, blocks and everything is still a part of science and technology and construction. So they sort of bring that awareness to us so that when the kids start to do that kind of stuff, it actually really helps them stimulate their mind of creativity.
I have learned, I think, through Rise to get to know them a little bit better and really see what funds of knowledge they have that they can contribute to us in the classroom and then go from there. They're the first teachers of their children, so they have something that is important to us. They have the knowledge of their child, and we need that knowledge in order to help their children succeed.
In Project Rise, we appreciate, value what families are doing. They are their children's first teachers, and every family wants their child to succeed. So our efforts are not to say, hey, here's what you need to do at home with your child. It's what do you do at home with your child that we can then bring into the classroom.
Shadow, you need to find a partner. You want me to do it for you?
It is very intellectually challenging. If you really want to be able to take into account where you are as a teacher, where the kids are, recognize their experiential knowledge, and do something that is truly creative and truly helpful for the children, it's a lot of work. Teaching is not easy. And I hope that in our focus on co-construction and the active process, it is not the same thing as taking curriculum and implementing activities. It is far more active, far more dynamic, and our hope that the teachers recognize this themselves is validating to them, but I think it validates to the larger world, I hope, that this is a really important job, and what teachers do and what parents do in raising their kids and educating them is really significant.
80% of our population is a dual language learner, maybe even 90%. So children have a home language that's different than English.
What do you feel? Deja la mano adentro. ¿Qué sientes? ¿Qué es lo que sientes ahí adentro?
The issue is, how do you support children's first language while they're learning English? Because it is an important aspect of their life, their family life. What helps them learn better?
There's a major debate in the country about what to do with children whose first language is not English. And unfortunately, often what happens is the idea is we need to teach the children English so that when they enter the public school system, they know English. But what the research really ends up showing is that if you have a second language, your second language can be supported with your first language. So instead of using the first language as something to get rid of and eliminate, using your first language to help you learn the second language ends up being beneficial.
At least to our knowledge, there aren't curriculum that have in the preschool that have necessarily been developed with dual language learners as the starting point and the focal point. A lot of children's experiences are left out, and what I, having grown up as a middle-class white American, might experience in my curriculum, right, is that there are a lot of things I can take for granted. My parents didn't have to think about some of the things that other parents have to think about who might be coming from an international context or just have a different set of experiences than what we teach in school. And so starting at the place where we are not just validating, we're understanding what children's everyday experiences are like, the routines they engage in with their families, the kinds of things they talk about and think about. Having that influence the curriculum and how it's constructed, it's very exciting.
Often children who speak another language or are coming from a different cultural background, or it's very easy for us to, as educators, to fall into the trap of thinking of them as lacking experience or coming from backgrounds where they don't know. And I think for us what is very important is to recognize that everyone brings an expertise.
So acknowledging that their experiences at home and in their communities again, might reflect different things than children who are primarily English speakers. Those are important aspects of their lives that we can build on, that we can build rich curriculum around.
There's enough research to support the fact that we learn best when we're learning, able to make familiar connections, when we're dealing with familiar knowledge. And with recent immigrants or children who speak a different language, that often isn't the case. Their experiences are not reflected in the curriculum.
I really learned a lot from the training. The training helps us to implement to the curriculum and how to teach children science. So from science and connect it to literacy and other areas.
I serve as a link between the principal investigators in the program and the teachers. I'm that middle person who pulls all that together. So we have professional development workshops with them, of which I am a part, and help teach those as well as help plan them. But the day-to-day operations of relating to the teachers, oftentimes the co-PIs will say to me, "You know the teachers better than we do." That's because I am with the teachers. I'm in their rooms to observe. I'm also in there every other week to meet with them one-on-one. And in that role, I get to know them very well.
She can report back and tell us things like, well, the children are really interested in shadows. They've really been noticing shadows. So let's think about what we could do to help the teachers think about shadows in a more scientific way.
You learn through relationships with other people and knowledge that other people give you, and you use that to become a better teacher. And I think once you have somebody that is really concentrating their time on what you're doing in the classroom and reflecting upon it, I think is the perfect way to be a more effective teacher.
The learning community where Chinese Church and East Boston staff, they meet regularly to share ideas, to really strategize together, to really inform and exchange and discuss things. This is one thing that I see that would be very, very beneficial in the future for everybody, for all classrooms.
They have gotten together as a group and developed relationships within their own self, and that the training or the learning is not always directed from top to bottom, but they're sort of directing their own learning about what they want to know, what they want to learn upon. I think that's something that we can really continue to have in our program, even if funding isn't available.
You just never know, so where am I in my teaching practice? You really need to go and talk to other colleagues.
Co-construction in the RISE project means that we are working together with the teachers to figure out the best way to present science, technology, and engineering content to young children.
All of the people who are involved in a child's learning are coming together. Everyone is respected. Everyone's opinion and expertise is valued.
It requires not just having everyone express their opinion, but also working with respect and collaborations.
By the time it's done, you can't tell whose ideas they were because we have all contributed, and it has changed so much as we've gone through the process of co-constructing.
When I look at this whole
idea of co-construction. I think really the teachers taking the ownership of what the big picture is the way to go in early childhood education.
At conferences, our colleagues have been very encouraging of is please tell us about this process. The process is just as important as what comes out of the process.
We have taken this notion of co-construction, articulating what it is, working with each other, with the teachers, with the parents, that process of dialogue and discourse. I really believe very strongly that that's where knowledge that is most relevant is created.
Co-construction is something that in most programs and in programs I've worked in, it's from the top down, where teachers are basically force-fed, this is how you can teach this, these are the concepts, and here's the curriculum. In RISE, they're developing a curriculum. That validates these teachers, and it validates the parents. And the parents are learning along with their children, just as the teachers are learning. We all are as a team.
My son is brilliant because of this program. He's opened up, he's more curious because of RISE. I've seen the difference within 1 year.
I truly believe the good science, technology, and engineering has to start young. RISE has taken science, technology, and engineering and focused that learning on young children.
On another level, I think it's life-changing on a personal and a professional level.
RISE has certainly come to that higher expectations than I ever expected.
It changed me. I'm doing things that I've never done. It's like I'm learning along with the children.
I hope that this is something that I'm working on for the rest of my career.
To know that you're affecting children's lives in positive ways, it's really extraordinary.
I sincerely believe that seeing is believing. If we can find good ways to spread the word, that we can begin to change the world.